And good evening. Welcome to the big story. My name is Michelle Ngele. Tonight, police and private investigators are following every lead they can to unravel the mystery surrounding the obituary advertisement carried by the Daily Nation newspaper on Wednesday, whose details compare to those of businessman Jimmy Maina Wanjigi. Now, Jimmy Wanjigi, who appeared before the Directorate of Criminal Investigations headquarters together with a couple of NASA leaders today, told journalists he believes the advert was a promise for his death. Jimmy Wanjigi has connections with the National Super Alliance and is believed to have been the financial machinery behind Raila Odinga's presidential campaigns last year. The mysterious obituary comes 3 months since the police raided Jimmy Wanjigi's Muthaiga home in search of guns. The affluent businessman was also present at the NASA event in Uhuru Park on the 30th of January when Raila Odinga was sworn in as the people's president, an exercise that has been condemned by the government and led to several politicians being arrested and one Miguna deported to Canada on Tuesday night. Tonight on The Big Story, we attempt to answer that obituary riddle. The Daily Nation has since apologized for the erroneous advert. It's a big story tonight, but before we get you started, let me take you back 3 months ago when Jimmy's home was raided and what NASA and Jubilee had to say about the businessman. Listen in.
It is an unjustified siege, a siege that my family need not have gone through. It is actually a siege that is premised on nothing else but persecution. And I'm going to be very clear here. It is this home that Baba here agreed to come to shake hands with Uhuru Kenyatta.
Hiyo watu ndio wanaweka pesa katika kuendesha campaign ya watu wa NASA.
Ukweli wa mambo, huyu Jimmy Wanjigi ndiye aliwasaidia tukiwa G7 akasema Uhuru na Ruto. The same Jimmy Wanjigi ndiye amekuja anasaidia upande wetu, upande wa Raila.
Even after visiting the Directorate of Criminal Investigations today, Jimmy Wanjigi says he cannot trust police to conduct investigations on the erroneous obituary advert. Jimmy and some NASA leaders had gone to the DCI to block their arrest in connection to the events of January 30th at Uhuru Park. Listen in.
Other Kenyans have died since August the 8th. Many have been shot here. Many have been killed by the same arms of police. Same arms of police. And nothing has ever happened. Not even a public inquiry from the DPP on the 200, how many are they, Jim? 200? 300. 300 people have been killed. I'll just be another statistics if they do that to me. And if they do it, it is them. A nation media group know who they are because they were a messenger yesterday. At the end of the day, those are my true threats. Those are my true threats. And I do not believe that the state which they are so-called handing over to are the people who are going to investigate this. There are 300 people who have died so far. The police have, nobody has been investigated.
That is a riddle we seek to solve tonight. We'll be speaking to security expert Richard Tudor, who will join us live from Nakuru County, as well as lawyer Asya Hosea joining us live from Nairobi. Gentlemen, good evening. Let me begin with you, Mr. Tudor. As a security expert, Jimmy Wanjigi says this is a promise for his death. What do you make of that obituary to begin with?
One thing that is coming out clearly is that the whole thing can be looked from various perspectives. One can decide to look at the whole saga from a whose benefit perspective, whereby you look at it from who is to benefit from what has happened. And sometimes when you use that approach, you realize that at times even the complainant himself tends to be a suspect and eventually even becomes the perpetrator. And you can also decide to look at the whole saga from the law cards exchange principle, whereby you can investigate it based on the fact that when a criminal interacts with a scene of crime, there are always traces that that criminal will always leave behind. And you realize that from the information that is available in the open sources is that there is that what was left behind in terms of a very clear picture of the suspect. With those two things in mind. The investigators now can pin together those who are to benefit from it all, both politically, economically, and socially. It can be an individual, it can be a group of persons, it can be people within and without a political system, both maybe in NASA and Jubilee. It can be an inside job within the media house. So it is something that requires a broader angle into it.
All right. So it can be anything, really. I'm going by Mr. Tudor's definition, his description there. Let me come to you, Mr. Hosea. What do you make of this? And just to ask the same question, Mr. Tudor is asking, who is to benefit from this obituary?
Michelle, thank you so much. First, I would like to, sympathize with the family of Jimmy Wanjigi for such a publication, which puts him in a very bad situation in terms of his reputation, in terms of, shaking up his family and friends. And as you can see from the conversation that he has spoken to the media, there is that aspect of people, who know him in person, asking themselves questions whether what is the intention of the people. We can allude the obituary to so many things. It can be political, it can be personal. At the moment, we can only be able to speculate as to who should benefit or who intended to benefit from such an obituary. But we have seen from the history, this is not the first time Jimmy Wanjigi has put himself in a situation of this kind, or we have seen somebody, going against, trying to intimidate or trying to, frustrate him in one way or another. You played a clip of last year where we saw police officers went and raided his house. He came out and spoke strongly against it. So there are so many issues. If you look at it from different perspectives, you could reach so many conclusions as to what really the people who intended to have him, on the obituary wanted to achieve. So it can be political, it can be personal, business related, family related. At the moment, we can only speculate.
Right, Mr. Tudor, taking a look at events that have happened since 3 months ago when Jimmy Wanjigi's house was raided, there was speculation that he was among the chief financiers of Raila Odinga. That has since been confirmed, so to speak. He was also among those who were present at Uhuru Park on the 30th of January in that controversial oath-taking by Raila Odinga. The events following that, of course, have raised quite a lot of eyebrows, the latest being Miguna's deportation to Canada. What could this advert symbolize in terms of perhaps how the government is responding to that oath-taking?
As I had said earlier, that there is need to find out whether it is something that it's political, social, or economic. Because when you look at the advert, it mentions things to do with the company, it mentions something to do with the family, then it is very important to establish what other people might call the cui bono. What was the intention of the person who did it? Because you may realize that the intention, just like I said in the beginning, might be to achieve some political mileage, might be to achieve some economic advantage, or might be to achieve some social advantage over and above what the person that was named has currently. But you cannot go into such like an investigation with a fixed mind that you decide to look at it from, for instance, from a political angle alone, and you forget to look at it from other angles that I've said. This is a situation that requires what we may call a 360 degrees investigation.
All right, and of course, we had Jimmy Wanjigi today give his, speak to the press in front of the DCI headquarters today when he, among 12 NASA leaders, presented themselves there for questioning. And he clearly says this is a promise on his death. And what's even more interesting, let me come to you, Mr. Hosea, is the very fact that the contents of the obituary were very similar to the life itself of Jimmy Wanjigi. So let's take a look at how the contents of the obituary in question and the details of Jimmy Wanjigi, the man, compare. The similarities here are just stark. So let's take a look at some of that there. The name on the obituary read James Richard Wanjigi, and Wanjigi seems to have been the only name that was changed in that obituary. Many saying 98% of the information on the obituary really did relate to Jimmy Wanjigi himself. Now, his real name there is Jimmy Richard Wanjigi and not James Richard Wanjigi. But there was also in the obituary, he was described as the son of James Maina and Wambui Magari. The real truth is that he is the son of former cabinet minister James Maina Wanjigi. So a striking resemblance there, with those names, James Maina and husband of Irene Nzisa, that again repeating itself in that obituary. And we also had details of where the children of Jimmy Wanjigi go to school. The children, according to the obituary, schooled at the Institut Lorozé in Switzerland. And facts about Jimmy Wanjigi is his children do indeed school at the Institut Lorozé in Switzerland. It also describes him as a man who worked for Kwacha Industries for 25 years with his friends and family, expected to meet at his wife's Muthaiga home. Now, how true was that? Well, Jimmy Wanjigi is indeed the founder and chairman of Kwacha Group and does have a home located along Muthaiga Road. So, very stark resemblance with regard to the details of Jimmy Wanjigi. No doubt, Mr. Hosea, that this was targeted at Jimmy Wanjigi himself. Again, raising a lot of questions about, security. Many have questioned the independence of the media itself, with whether they went ahead and verified this information. The nation media has, of course, come out to apologize. But what politically could this mean, and what legal avenues can then be pursued by Mr. Wanjigi?
Thank you, Michelle. I think, first of all, it's very important to note that nation media proceeded to apologize to such an erroneous publication on their newspaper. It's very professional to do that. I think the first question we need to ask ourselves, how did that obituary get into that newspaper in the first place? Because there is that process that you need to follow before you put up an obituary. You must state who you are. You must produce your identification card. From the details that the nation media are giving us is that this person presented fraudulent documents. That means they did not scrutinize the basic documents which are required, somebody is required to produce before he is allowed to put such an obituary on the newspaper. Having said that, I think there are so many legal implications that will follow this. First, obviously, this is a matter that might end up in court. I don't want to speculate, but I think, obviously, it has put the family of Jimmy Wanjigi in bad light. Obviously, they'll want to use the legal recourse to try and see whether they can get justice. Number two, that issue raises the question of journalism, irresponsible journalism in this country. Let's ask ourselves, how many families have suffered from such irresponsible publications, which obviously could have been avoided if the due process was followed, if things are scrutinized as they are required to be scrutinized. So that falls into irresponsible journalism, and I think our courts will be are always strict in ensuring that, rights, basic rights, especially the rights of Jimmy Wanjigi, are protected, even if it means, through those legal channels. So I guess he has quite a number of legal recourse to take. He can institute proceedings in court to actually challenge that publication, and also he can also proceed to investigate and find out the masterminds of the people who actually planned to put his name in bad repute.
All right, and I understand there is already CCTV footage that was earlier released by the Nation Media Group describing or showing a visual description of the man we said have booked that obituary later on. But Mr. Tudor, Jimmy Wanjigi is among the politicians, I believe 12 of them, NASA leaders who've had their passports revoked by the government following that oath-taking on the 30th of January. That obituary comes, at a very suspect time. time, considering the manner in which events have been unfolding in the country. Again, what legal route can Jimmy Wanjigi and his lawyers take?
You see, the first thing is to try and find out who exactly did it before you even move to the next level of taking legal action against whoever it is. And in finding out whoever did it, you realize that you cannot rule out that one thing that is coming out clearly is that this is not a case of a lone wolf affair. This is an organized, sort of an organized crime whereby you realize that by default or by design, somebody decided to create a gap for the suspect to find room in putting the picture into the newspaper, either by default or by design. Then you'll also realize that the wording is something else that is coming out clearly, is that this must have been somebody who is well known to the person mentioned. And this might be a case whereby you have a noisy neighbor next door. Then once now the police or whoever it is, and I think it is the police, finishes with the investigation and maybe pins down the culprit, then maybe the person aggrieved now can pick it from there and maybe sue either the Nation newspaper or that individuals who have committed the offense.
All right, and Jimmy Wanjigi himself, when we began, we heard him there say he cannot trust the police to investigate this erroneous, obituary in the Daily Nation. Mr. Hosea, a lot of mistrust, it continues to spread across the country following that controversial oath-taking on the 30th, so to speak. And a lot of these leaders have come out saying their lives are in danger. Jimmy Wanjigi said they're saying this is a promise. Saying this is a promise to his death. Seemingly saying there is a death threat that has been put on his back. The case is being investigated by the Directorate of Criminal Investigations, but the opposition has already expressed dissatisfaction or distrust in the police investigating this to begin with. What do you make of that?
I think, first of all, we must note that Jimmy has been a victim of the police before. And looking at the criminal investigation process in this country, it has been marred with a lot of, incompetency and unprofessionalism. And we have seen so many cases where the heads of the police come out and say, we are investigating, but they are not doing anything. We have seen so many criminal cases which are, have been taken up by the police for investigations and have not been concluded. It's easy to conclude that, obviously, from the experience that he has had before with the police, he cannot be able to trust the same people. And considering that there's the perception that him being an opposition sympathizer, he cannot get justice through the police, now that the police are perceived to be an arm of government, the government that he is opposed to. So there is displeasure in how the criminal investigation in this country has been conducting itself in terms of investigation. Obviously, if there is that political influence, you don't expect justice from that. You can go to our courts. You will experience that the presentations in terms of investigations that are brought to courts are very shoddy, in that you find the prosecution process did not properly conduct its self-investigation or get cogent evidence to convict a criminal. So obviously sometimes, and almost all the times, matters are dismissed because of lack of proper evidence or proper investigations carried by the police officers. So I tend to agree with Jimmy on his position that he has no faith in the system in terms of allowing them to investigate as to who really conducted that atrocity. And I guess the Constitution and our statutes allow individuals to conduct private investigations, hire private firms to conduct private investigations. Under the Criminal Procedure Code, and Section 88 provides that an individual can institute or can apply to institute private prosecution if he feels that the public prosecution will not be able to be independent. That is also provided for under Article 157 of the Constitution, which reiterates that individuals who don't feel or who feel uncomfortable in the public investigation process or who don't have faith in the public investigation process can endeavor to apply to court to actually appoint private investigators to conduct such investigations so as to ensure that justice is met.
All right, and how protected in that same breath, Mr. Hosea, are these individuals, especially those who have seemingly denounced the government of one Uhuru Kenyatta? How protected are they under this constitution, considering just a week ago they had the security detail withdrawn? Yes. Later, after that, they had the Department of Immigration Services revoking their passports. Seemingly, they cannot leave the country. How protected are they?
I think all Kenyans are protected by the Constitution. We promulgated a very progressive Constitution, which actually every Kenyan is supposed to enjoy. If you look at our Constitution and what transpired last week and this week about Miguna being deported to Canada, it's very unfortunate that institutions of government which are supposed to uphold the rule of law will go to an extent of violating individual rights as provided for under the Constitution. If you read Article 20 of the Constitution, it provides that all state organs are bound by the Bill of Rights under our Constitution, in that you cannot proceed and violate any rights as provided under Chapter 4 of the Constitution. Those rights are enjoyed by all Kenyans equally. So what happened about Miguna last week was very unfortunate. We witnessed as Kenyans an individual being deprived the right to liberty, the right to express himself, the right to be produced in court, all the rights of an accused person as provided under Article 49 and 50 were violated. So there is the obligation which is put before the state. And I think as Kenyans and as practitioners in different fields, we need to hold our government accountable as to whether we can watch an individual's rights being violated. Tomorrow, today is Miguna and Wanjigi, tomorrow it will be me and you. Now ask yourself if these people who are in positions of influence, their rights can be actually violated like that. What happens to the common mwananchi, you and me? What kind of position does the government appreciate the fact that you enjoy these rights under the Constitution? So I guess there is much that we need to have a conversation as to whether the Constitution that we promulgated should be followed, and the government should ask itself whether it is following the footsteps of the Constitution as the governing document of this republic.
All right, and that is our big story tonight. The mystery surrounding that obituary advertisement that was strikingly close to businessman Jimmy Wanjigi on one of our local dailies this week. We take a short break, but when we come back, we'll be speaking to our lead reporter, Sophia Onuna. She'll be joining us live from our city center studios, speaking live to Jimmy Wanjigi's lawyer. Stay with us.